Hi, good morning to everyone. Welcome to Desktop Central training program. So today's training is about patch management. I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar in your busy schedule. Before we proceed further, please comment in the chat section to know if you are able to view my presentation and also hear my voice. Thank you all for your confirmation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sriram, and I'm associated with Desktop Central for past 5 years. As you're aware, we're going to see how patch management works when it comes to Desktop Central. As you can see, this is the training schedule for the entire series. And it's a 7-week series, and we are in week 1. And we've already completed the first schedule by 6:30 GMT, and now we are in 11:30 EST time. All the sessions will be recorded, and it will be available in the below mentioned website. And all the registered participants will receive the recorded training video via an email as well. Before we start the training, I want to share with you the agenda for today. So first, let's see what is patch management and how it works in overview, followed by the architecture. From my support experience, I will be sharing 4 scenarios which would comprehensively cover the entire patch automation process and its components. We'll also see how to test and deploy the patches to the test and production environment. Deploying patches manually to multiple sites every month will be a tedious job for an administrator. Let's see how to overcome the situation using automated patch deployment. And there might be some difficult situations where you need to install the critical patches immediately to the production environment. For an example, 0-day critical patches. We will see how to achieve this using the patch deployment technique. And for better understanding, let me share with you some of the interesting scenarios which I came across while interacting with the customers. And at last, conclusion of the session with most frequently asked questions with answers. And during the training session, if you come across any questions, feel free to use the chat option to chat with our expert team. We will collect all the questions raised during the session, and they will also be published for the larger audience view. So here comes the supported operating system. Desktop Central supports patches for all 3 flavors of operating system, Windows, Mac, and Linux. In Windows, we support all operating systems starting from Windows XP till Windows 10. And when it comes to Linux, we support most of the important flavors like Red Hat, CentOS, Ubuntu, and Debian. And the same thing applies even for Macintosh. We offer support for 1,000+ applications when it comes to Desktop Central. And like 300+ third-party applications are supported when it comes to Desktop Central 2. So here comes the Desktop Central architecture, one of the important parts when it comes to this module. So the first part we're going to see here is the server installation. When it comes to Desktop Central, it's a server and agent model where the server installation is mandatory. So Desktop Central, as you know, it's an on-premise solution, and Desktop Central Server can be installed in your local network or DMZ. I presume everybody knows about DMZ. It is demilitarized zone. It is where you can place your server in secured hosting so that the client machines can reach the server in a secured way. We'll also see how to install the agents to the client machine. Agents should be installed on all the client machines in order to manage those machines with Desktop Central. So agent installation can be done through multiple ways. So first option is through the Windows GPO or a startup script. If you're using Active Directory and Windows Network, you should be able to leverage that by deploying agents using group policy. And the next easiest way would be through the console. You can just push the agents to the client machine. While pushing the agents from the console, I would request you to kindly ensure that Desktop Central have access to the admin dollar of the client computer. If there is no access, then you might end up with an error message, network path not found. So please ensure that access is available for the Desktop Central server. Or you can go for the third option, which is downloading the agent manually and installing it in the client environment. So these are the ways you can install the agent on your client environment. When it comes to Desktop Central, we support for desktop, laptop, server, and surfaces. If you have any questions to what you've completed, please use the chat option to chat with our expert team. So here we're going to see about the remote offices. Using Desktop Central, you can manage machines in LAN as well as in wide area network. When you push a patch to the machines which are in local area network, those machines will download the patches from the Desktop Central server directly. Whereas when you manage machine in WAN, you can very well utilize the distribution server to deploy the patches to the machines which are available in WAN. So you might wonder, what is a distribution server? How is this going to help you when it comes to the patch deployment? For example, if you have any concerns with the bandwidth and if you manage more than 20 machines in a remote site, here is where a distribution server comes into picture. So when a task is created, the machines which are located in the remote site will reach the distribution server, and the distribution server will reach the Desktop Central server to download the patches. So in this case, you can manage the bandwidth efficiently, as well as the CPU performance can be managed too. You can also manage users on the go, like users on the go in the sense roaming users who move from one location to another can be managed with Desktop Central. So to achieve this, if you are managing Desktop Central server in LAN or in DMZ, you can enable a NATing in your firewall. Or you can utilize the forwarding server feature, which will help to communicate the agent securely. So you might wonder, what is a forwarding server? If you wish to manage the roaming users securely, then you can utilize the forwarding server feature. So this acts as a secure gateway between the roaming agent and the Desktop Central server. Any communication from the roaming agents to the Desktop Central server will be routed through the forwarding server. AWS and Azure. There might be multiple scenarios why you wish to install the server in cloud. If you manage more roaming users, having the server in cloud will be an advantage. So in this scenario, you can place the Desktop Central in AWS or Azure. It's a cost-effective solution. If you are placing the device in cloud, it can avoid the hardware infrastructure and maintenance costs for infrastructure. And if you have a distribution server for cloud in your network, which will contact the AWS or Azure instance, and your client machines can also be managed. It can also manage roaming users via your distribution server. If you host your application servers in cloud, they can be managed directly from Azure or AWS network. I'm glad to let you know that DZ will be available on cloud very soon, where it can comprehensively manage all of these above mentioned features efficiently. By now, we have released cloud for another ManageEngine product, which is Patch Manager Plus Cloud. So here comes the components involved when it comes to Desktop Central. As you can see, there are 7 components involved. Out of 7, 3 are essential and 4 optional components. I believe by now you'll be aware of all the components mentioned over here except the failover server. So let me concise about the failover server. Failover server brings in an additional server which actively monitors the primary server and takes over the operation when the primary server fails. This feature helps you in eliminating the downtime in your business. One of the important parts in Desktop Central is managing the ports. We would recommend you to open the ports shown here in order to manage specific features with Desktop Central. Agent-server communication happens in port 8020, and server-to-agent notification happens in port TCP 8027. And voice and video chat. One of the features associated with the product works in UDP 8443. If it is a Windows firewall blocking the ports, we will notify you in the home screen of Desktop Central, and that can be added as an exception. Agent-server communication happens securely on port 8383. What happens if this port is blocked only server machine? Any patch or software deployment task you push from the server will not get completed. There might be an error message of ready to execute or yet to deploy for a very long time. So please check these ports are reachable and it's unblocked. To know more information about the ports, please visit the below mentioned website, which is www.desktopcentral.com/ports. 90 minutes refresh policy. Desktop Central architecture is scalable to manage different network and even larger networks up to 20,000 machines. This is possible because of the refresh policy we use. Let me explicit this in simple terms. Desktop Central agent would be contacting the server at every 90 minutes, and this is called as agent refresh cycle. And this feature ensures that all computers in the network contact the server periodically. So two factors are ensured here. Network is not choked by agent communication, meaning bandwidth is not disturbed due to the agent-server communication. And the performance of the server is not affected at any time. And Desktop Central Server has an intelligence to endure systematic, streamlined communication from all the agents at regular intervals. I can give you a better example here. In a network of 90 computers, for each minute, one computer will reach out to the Desktop Central Server. And for 900 computers, for a minute, 10 computers will reach the Desktop Central Server. When it comes to a larger network, like 9,000 machines, 100 machines will reach the Desktop Central Server. Using this feature, we ensure a hassle-free communication from agent to the server. So here comes the important part, patch management architecture. So when a patch is released, it will be available in the vendor website. Our patch crawler team repeatedly probes the internet to draw the vulnerability patch information from the vendor site. And this process will happen on a daily basis. Once the patches are successfully downloaded to our environment, we perform a basic testing. So this testing involves whether the patches can be successfully installed in our environment or not, compatibility check, and the applicability of the patches will be tested during this process, and then it will be published to the central patch repository, which is residing in our environment. So once the patches or once the details are successfully published, the next step is to initiate a synchronization between your Desktop Central Server and the central patch repository. Once the synchronization is done, your Desktop Central Server will initiate a scan on all the client machines. And once the scanning process is done, your Desktop Central Server will be aware of the missing patches details. Now, based on the patch deployment task, the patches will be downloaded from the vendor site directly, and those patches will be pushed to the environment available. So this is the outline of the architecture. We'll also see more information about the architecture once we are done with this part. So moving on to the objective. To explain the patch management model in a better way, I've taken an objective which is setting up patch management. So here are the enterprise level best practices for setting up patch management. We can see how to scan the machine and test patches in non-production machines. Once the testing process is done, let's see how to approve these tested patches. And after the approval, we can see how to deploy the tested patches to our production environment. To make the deployment process easier, let's have a look on how to create automate patch deployment task, and we'll see how to deploy those patches on a periodic basis. At last, we'll have a look at creating reports. Before we step into our objective, I'm going to provide more information on how Microsoft suggests their customers to deploy the patches. As you all know, every month, second Tuesday will be considered as Patch Tuesday by Microsoft. During this time, a lot of patches will be released, and based on the used cases, a lot of customers had no clue on which updates are actually required for their client machines. Based on the operating system, I'm going to share a brief note on which update is mostly required for Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10 operating system. When it comes to Windows 7 and Windows 8, following are the major updates which are required. Security-only updates. An update that has all the new security updates for a given month. And security monthly quality rollup. They include both security and reliability updates that are packaged together. The monthly rollup addresses new security issues and will proactively include updates that were released in the past. And when it comes to Windows 10, Delta, Cumulative, and Feature Pack are the major updates required. So what is a Delta update? An update that has all the new security updates for a given month. And cumulative update, they include both security and reliability updates that are packaged together. And the cumulative update addresses new security issues and will proactively include updates that were released in past. So here comes the feature pack updates. So feature pack updates will be released twice per year, and the support for the feature pack will be available for 18 months. So it has a lot more upgrades which will be available in the feature pack. As you all know, Microsoft has released the recent feature pack, which is Windows 10 1809, and there are a lot of issues where after the deployment, a lot of files have been deleted automatically from the path. So where Microsoft have stopped supporting this feature pack update, and even Desktop Central go with the same process where we have stopped supporting 1809. So we are on a frequent touch with Microsoft to know the exact status, and once Microsoft release these updates, we'll also start supporting those updates in Desktop Central. Microsoft also suggests their customers to deploy the patches first to your pilot environment and then push those patches to the production environment. For example, the 1809 issue can be easily avoided if we have tested those patches in our test environment. But that doesn't happen where most of the customers just deployed those patches to the production environment. So it's always advisable whenever a patch is released, please do a testing in your pilot environment and then push the patches to the production environment, which will help you to avoid unnecessary issues and downtime in your business environment. So full patch approach. As you can see, whenever Microsoft test their patches in their environment, they normally deploy all the required patches for those machines. It can be a security, a non-security update, or a critical, any type of update. Microsoft deploy all the required patches for that specific environment. But what we do is, we don't deploy a non-security update when it's getting released. We only go with the security and important updates where there will be a lot of confusion and mismatch when it comes to the deployment. So we always suggest you to stage your deployment. So when a security patch is getting released, or when it comes to a Patch Tuesday, if you want to deploy only security patches by that week, just stage the process where you can have the first Tuesday for security and critical patches, and the second Tuesday can be for non-security updates. So in this way, you can deploy all the required patches for your production environment. Understanding patch management. To explain the objective in a better manner, based on Microsoft's suggestion, I've taken a live example here. John, one of our loyal customers who is managing hotels in multiple locations, are managing over 15,000 computers in his network, which is spread across the globe, as you can see, New York, London, Chicago, where he manages multiple remote offices in different locations. By now, his major requirement is to test and deploy the patches which are released by last month to all his hotels on a periodic basis. Once the deployment is done, John should share the report to Peter, who is his IT manager. So let's see how John and team achieve this objective using Desktop Central. For that, I'm going to log in to the Desktop Central console as John. So here I've logged in as John, the administrator. And my first objective here is to configure the proxy settings. So I've clicked on Admin, Patch Settings, Proxy Settings. The main reason for configuring the proxy server is Desktop Central should contact the central patch repository to update the vulnerability database. As well as to download the patches from the vendor site, proxy should be enabled. As you can see, you'll find multiple options to configure the proxy. If you want to go with a direct communication, you can choose that, or if you want to go with, or if you have a username and password, you can very well enter those information and you can configure the proxy. Also, please confirm that patchdb.manageengine.com is open in order to download the vulnerability database. So our next objective here is the patch database settings. So you can choose a specific type of patches which you wish to manage, like operating system related patches or third-party patches. All the computers will be scanned to identify the missing patches based on this selection. So you might wonder where it looks a bit different from the console what you manage in your environment. So where you'll not be finding any security updates over here. I'll show you how it exactly works. One minute. So here comes the option where in the previous build, we only provide you options to manage Microsoft and third-party patches, where we have got a new feature in the latest build, which is 10.0.307, and which is already released and it's available in our website. So what you can do here is you can choose the updates which should get synchronized and which should be noted for you on the missing patches view. I can also show you how this exactly works. So here under the patch management, missing patches view, you can find the details of the patches which are missing for your environment. If you're going to choose only security and service pack updates, only those patch details will be updated over here. So you can just manage only those required updates in your environment. So this is one of the new features which is added for customers' convenience. So you can very well go ahead and choose this, and you can make use of the feature. And the same thing applies for Mac and Linux update too. And one of the important things here is you can choose the enable schedule option, and you can automate the synchronization process. So once you put up this option here, like 11 o'clock, on a daily basis, your Desktop Central server will reach the central patch repository, and it downloads the vulnerability patch database. So once this information is done, this can be managed using up this option. I believe there is an issue with the audio. I think like you guys cannot hear my audio. Just give me a minute. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm really sorry. There was an audio issue in between. That's the reason I was about to stop. So I'll start from where I've stopped. So here comes the enable synchronization. You can put up this option so where your Desktop Central server will reach the central patch repository, and it downloads the patch database, and it can be managed. Once the synchronization process is done, the next important step is to scan all the machines and identify the missing patches. So before we step on to that path option, we'll see how to install the agents in our environment. So where you can go to the scope of management, computers, and you'll find an option called add computers, add domain, and you can choose the credentials. You can enter the administrator credentials over here. So we manage both Active Directory as well as workgroup at the same time. A type of mixed network can be managed without any problem. So once you've updated the credentials here, you can very well go ahead and choose under select computers, and then the machines will be listed here. You can just click on add and install agents. So this will push the agents silently to the client machine. So this is the agent installation part. And what will exactly happen when we push an agent to the client machine, how the agents are getting installed. We remotely connect to that machine and copy the installables. Once that process is done, we will remotely again invoke the installation. So in this way, the agents can be installed in your client environment. And one of the important things here is the agent settings. Once the agents are successfully installed, what type of action you want that agent to be performed on that client machine. So it can perform a patch scan or it can perform an inventory scan. So based on this option, the task will be initiated and a scanning will be performed. And one of the important things here, most of the customers used to complain that they do not or they don't want the users or the client machine users to see any type of update which is happening on that client machine. So you can just go ahead and choose or uncheck this option so where any process you initiate on that client machine will not be shown to the user. So our next objective is to scan all the machines and identify the missing patches. So we have done our first objective, which is the synchronization part. Now the server will be able to understand what are all the new patches which are released. So let's go ahead and scan the machine and we'll identify the missing patches. For that, I'm going to click on Patch Management, Systems, and Scan Systems. So here you can go ahead and choose the machine you wish to scan, and you can just click on Scan System, or you can also scan the entire machine group. But that is not my objective. My objective is to automate the entire process. When it comes to Desktop Central, the great thing here is we have automated each and everything. So where the synchronization process is automated and even the scan process is automated over here. So once the synchronization is done, any machine which is reaching the server by the next 90 minutes will be scanned automatically and the missing patches will be identified. So this process is again automated. And once the scanning process is done, the client machine will post the data back to the server stating that these are the patches required for the environment. And those information will be listed here under the missing patches view. So what you can do is you can just go ahead to the missing patches view, just choose the patches, and you can install the patches to the environment, which is a very simple way to deploy the patches. And it will automatically choose the required target machines too. So you don't need to choose any target machine here. Just choose the deployment policy by when the patches should get deployed and click on Deploy Immediately or Deploy. So what's the difference between deploy or deploy immediately? Deploy is something like where the task will be initiated only during the refresh cycle. So any machine which reaches within the next 90 minutes will pick up the task and it will execute it on the client machine and it will post the data to the server. So it's a 90-minute process. Whereas when it comes to deploy immediately, it's an on-demand task. So where when you push a task, immediately server will notify the client machine on the port 8027, and the client machine will pick up the task and it will execute the task on the client machine, and automatically the task will get completed and the data will be posted back to the server. So this is how you can do a manual deployment. But as per my objective, I should first test the patches in my pilot environment, and then I should deploy those patches using automated patch deployment. So for that, we're going to step into the test and approve. Till now, if you guys have any questions, please use the chat option to chat with our support team. So here comes the add group option. So the modify option is like where you can go ahead and choose how you wish to manage the patches. So whether you want to manage like automatically without testing. So whenever a patch comes to your environment, it will be just marked as automatically approved. So where there won't be any testing involved when it comes to this process. Whereas when it comes to test and approve, the patches will be tested in your pilot environment and then it will be approved. So let's see how to create a test group here. So you can create a test group for all three flavors of operating system, Windows, Mac, and Linux. And you'll also find the custom group option. You might wonder why you should test the patches. So what's the big deal of testing the patches? Imagine you have an important application running in your production environment, like a banking application. Installing the patches to the production environment without testing might create issues like BSOD, or unexpectedly it can corrupt the banking application, or it can even reboot the machine. The best example is the Windows 10 1809 feature pack. So those patches are being tested in your pilot environment. Definitely, you wouldn't have pushed those patches to the production environment. So in this case, it will help you to manage the downtime in your business. And in order to secure the network, you can very well use the test and approve feature. And you might wonder, what is a custom group again? Custom group is a unique feature in Desktop Central, which helps you to create a specific group or a group for specific users and computers. So this group will help you to define a specific group of machines or users at the time of any frequent patch deployment or other requirement in Desktop Central. So you can also go to a report part. You can just choose the specific group and you can fetch the patch installed details report. So like multiple options can be used when it comes to a custom group. A lot of places you can utilize this group and you can fetch the reports and you can deploy the patches, deploy softwares. Everything is possible using a custom group. And one of the important things here is choosing the updates you wish to manage. So if you want to manage only the critical updates in your environment, you can very well go ahead and choose this option. Or you can, if you want to include or if you want to deploy patches only to a specific environment in your test group, you can very well do that. But when it comes to my personal recommendation, I would always suggest you to deploy any required patches for that test environment. Because in future, if you have any requirement of deploying patches or if you have any requirement of deploying a patch which is not tested, it's going to be a crucial job by that time because you cannot just go ahead and test the patches and then deploy to the environment. So to be on the safer side, it's always advisable to test all the required patches for your test environment. And moreover, I've seen few cases where customer used to complain that most of the patches are not getting deployed to the production environment. So what used to happen is customer will manage like Windows 10, Windows 7, Windows 8, and a lot of multiple operating systems in the production environment. Whereas when it comes to the test environment, they'll have only very few operating systems like flavors like Windows 8 and Windows 10, whereas the remaining patches will not be tested at all and it will stay in not approved till it gets tested. So any operating system you manage in the production environment, please duplicate the same operating system and the test environment to manage the patches efficiently. And here comes the important part, the deployment policy. So in the deployment policy, you will choose by when the patches should get deployed to your client environment. We're also working on customizing the deployment policy, and you'll be seeing a lot of changes in the upcoming builds. And when it comes to the deployment policy, you'll also choose by when the machine should get rebooted. You'll also see a lot of information when it comes to the deployment policy at the end of the session. And you can also put up a notification setting over here. So once the deployment is done in your pilot environment, you can get a detailed report on which patches have been approved, which patches have been failed, any download failure patches. All those information can be sent as a detailed report to your email address. You'll also find the automatically approved tested patches after certain days. As I've told you earlier, Desktop Central is full of automation. So where you can create your test and approve group as automated. So you can just approve the patches automatically after certain days. Imagine I put like 2 days over here. So the patches will be deployed in my test environment and it will be there for 2 days, where this 2 days of time will be enough for my administrator to check whether the patches are creating any issues in my test environment. And if the patches are creating any issues in my environment, I can very well go ahead and decline those patches. So once I decline a patch, those patches cannot be installed in my production environment. And one great thing when it comes to decline patch is those patches will not be shown as missing. I'll also explain more information about the decline patches in the coming slides. So we have created a test and approve group based on my objective. Let me show you how a test and approve group exactly looks like. So here comes the pilot group which I've created, and it gives you a detailed information about the task what I've created, when the patches should get deployed, what type of updates I've chosen. All this information will be available here. And you can also check the patches which I've chosen to deploy. So as you can see, everything has been mentioned as 0 because I've already cleared my test and approve group. I've already deployed the patches to my test environment the last week because we normally manage it on a weekly basis. We stage our deployment. So that's the reason you cannot find any patches here. So if you want to modify this task or if you want to delete this task, you can very well go ahead and you can do it up here. So as per my objective, I've done a synchronization of scanned the machines, identified the missing patches, deployed the patches successfully to my test environment. And my next important objective is to deploy patches to the production environment using Automate Patch Deployment. To provide more information about Automate Patch Deployment, I'm going to take you back to the presentation. So here comes the patch DB sync and the scanning process. As we've seen earlier, the patch DB synchronization is the first step. Based on the schedule, the DB synchronization will happen. And once the synchronization is done, by the next 90 minutes, all the machines will be scanned and the missing patches will be identified. Once the missing patches is identified, next important thing here is the APD insights. One of the important things is how the architecture of Automate Patch Deployment works. So once the scanning process is done, the next important step is to download the required patches from the vendor side. So how this will happen? Is that going to be like a manual process? No, not exactly. So this is again an automated process. So once the scan process is done, based on the Automate Patch Deployment task you have created, the patches will be downloaded from the vendor side automatically. So once the patches are downloaded, based on the deployment policy, the patches will be pushed to the environment. And once the patches are successfully installed to the environment, there is also something where a post-production option which is available. I believe a few users have been having issues with the audio. Just give me 2 minutes of time where our team is working on it and we'll be fixing it very soon. I'm extremely sorry for the inconvenience. So the issue has been fixed. Thank you so much. And when it comes to this part, as you can see, the patches will be downloaded successfully, and based on the deployment, the patches will be deployed to the production environment. And once the patches are successfully deployed to the production environment, then you can get a history of patches as well as a detailed report what exactly happened on that specific environment. So whether the patches have been successfully deployed, a live report will be shared to you on an hourly basis, where you can also choose when the report should be sent to multiple email address and which format you need. You can choose all those information using up this option. And you'll also find the details of the patches which are deployed last month. All those information will be available in the task, which was great. And now I'm going to show you how to create an Automate Patch Deployment task in Desktop Central. So here you can choose what type of operating system you wish to manage, whether Windows, Mac, or Linux. You can very well choose it. My requirement is to deploy patches to the Windows environment. So here I can choose the updates which I wish to manage, whether a critical, important, or which update I need to get deployed. I can very well choose it here. I can exclude a specific application. For an example, sometimes what customers will do is they don't want to deploy patches to Java applications. So they want to manage it in a different way. So you can just very well go ahead and exclude those applications. So the patches will not get deployed for those specific applications. And the same thing applies even to third-party Mac or Linux patches. It's all the same process. And you can also see the antivirus definition updates. So as of now, we provide support for McAfee antivirus as well as for Windows Forefront endpoint. And I'm glad to let you know that we'll be supporting Windows Defender updates within this month end. And you'll also find the deployment policy. As we've seen earlier, the deployment policy will help you to deploy patches based on your required timing. So you can put up a deployment window so where the deployment will happen by that time, and you can reboot the machines, restart, put up a notification, a lot of things involved when it comes to the deployment policy. And one of the important things here is the target option. So here is where you're going to choose to which set of machines the patches should get deployed. So my requirement is to deploy patches to 2 sites. So I've chosen that. And if you have any specific requirement where in these 2 sites, only a specific OU should get deployed, and only a specific site which I've created in my domain or which I've created in my AD should get deployed, I can very well choose that and I can do that. And with any group you have created in Desktop Central, if you want to deploy patches to those group or to an IP range or to an operating system, you can very well use up this option and it can be managed. And you'll also find configure notification setting option over here. And as I've told you, you can schedule your reports on a periodic basis. So once the deployment, while the deployment is happening, you can just get live reports to your email address. Like you can put up the format you need, you can choose the format you want, and using up this option, you can very well go ahead and get the reports in this manner. You can also add like multiple email addresses and the reports can be sent. So if you have any questions related to the automated patch deployment, please use the chat option and get it clarified. So let me show you how an automated patch deployment task exactly looks like. I'll show you the task which I've created. Under automated patch deployment task, you'll find the deployment for a New York site, which gives you a detailed information about the task. What happened to those patches, what happened to those machines, whether the patch deployment is successful or it's a failure, or while downloading the patches have been failed. All those information will be available over here. As you can see, the download failed patches. So it states it's failed, and it gives a remark, and it gives a read KB. So when you go with this read KB, the knowledge base, it gives you a clear information what is exactly causing the trouble. As you can see, the Desktop Central server is not reachable or cannot reach this specific URL. And that's the reason the download is getting failed. So once we add these information, once we unlock these URLs, the issue should get fixed. And moving back to the summary, here you can find the details of the patches which are deployed successfully. And if there are any issues with the patches, we still mention those information under remarks. And as you can see, the patches were not deployed to this environment because the machine is not reachable. It's my machine again. So again, the machine is not reachable, and that's the reason the deployment was not successful. So here you can find the detailed information about the patch view, which patches have been missing and why it's failed. All this information will be available and gives you a detailed remarks about it. As you can see, patch stored location is not available to download from the server. So where the client machine does not have access to reach the Desktop Central server in order to download this, so it might be an access issue for the client machine. So these type of issues will be like noted, and it will be available in the console itself where you can very well go ahead and check, and you can troubleshoot on your own. If you feel that it's a bit complicated and if it's not getting resolved, we would always suggest you to reach the support, and we'll definitely help you to fix the problem at earliest. So here we have created the automated patch deployment technique, and we have seen how to deploy the patches to the production environment. And I would also like to let you know that if you want to duplicate the same task, you just want to have with or without targets, you can very well go ahead and do that. And when it comes to a retry option, everyone has this question when it comes to the automated patch deployment task. What if a machine is not reaching the server within the time frame? If a machine not reaching the server within the time frame, the deployment will only happen when the machine comes in by the next deployment window. And imagine you have a deployment window for 5 hours of time. So the machine was not up, or the machine was not reaching the server for the first 2 hours of window. And the machine reaching up the server by the 3rd hour. Will the deployment happen on the machine? Yes, it will. So by that time, server will identify that the machine is up and running, and it will automatically reach the task and the scanning will be done, and the patches will get deployed to the environment. So in this way, Automate Patch Deployment extends its support to deploy the patches in your client environment. And the next important thing here is deploying zero-day critical patches to your production environment. So before we move on to that, I would like to give you more information about the changes which you have done in the dashboard. So here you can find the details and alerts. Previously, it used to be under the home, so where you find a lot of information under home, where you find information about inventory, software deployment, and even patch management. It was a bit clumsy. So where we have made a lot of changes, we have customized the entire patch management module in Desktop Central. We have created a separate dashboard only for patch management, where it gives you the information about patches which are failed, machines which requires a reboot, unapproved patches, download failed patches, and the latest security news will be updated here. If you need to know any information about the patches which are released, it can very well come up here and you can get it done. And it gives you a detailed information about the system health graph, how many machines are highly vulnerable, how many machines are healthy. All those information can be taken from here. And we are also working on customizing the dashboard, so where you can just create your own dashboard based on your requirement. You can just add the information which is actually required for your dashboard, and it should be released very soon within this year. And we have also got another important thing here as upload patch option. As you all know, if you have already installed a feature pack or a Java 6 or 7 updates using Desktop Central, you'll know how to deploy those patches. You need to download the ISO file, rename it, put it in the store, and then you need to initiate a deployment. A lot of process involved. But our team actually worked on that, and we have made the process entirely automated. We've already released this in our Patch Manager Plus, another ManageEngine product, so where we will be handling the feature pack update as well as the Java update, like how we manage the other patches. You can just go ahead and choose those patches and just deploy to the client machines. A very simple process where it can be managed, and to be released very soon. And we'll also update you through newsletters and through forums once it is released. And the next thing is managing the supported patches. Everyone wonder what is a supported patch and how that's going to help me out. Supported patch is nothing but it gives you a detailed information about what are all the patches supported by Desktop Central. It's not like these patches are actually required for your environment. If you want to know the patches which are actually required for your environment, please click on Applicable Patches view, which tells you the exact patches which are required for your environment. And if you wish to deploy any patches using the manual process, only go to the manual or the missing patches option and just choose the patches and deploy it. Do not use supported patches to deploy patches, because most of the time when you use supported patches to deploy patches to your environment, you'll get up a message not applicable, because the patch is actually not required for your environment. And you'll also find the decline patch option under patch management. We'll also see more information about this in the coming slides. Let's go ahead with the critical vulnerability. So here is where we mention, or whenever a critical patch is released, a zero-day critical patch, a meltdown or a Spectre, or any important patch which should be installed in your environment as soon as possible. So those type of patches will be shown over here. So you don't need to go ahead, or you don't need to reach missing patches to choose those patches and deploy. It's not required at all. We have made this process more simpler. You can just come here, you can choose the patches, just click on Install Patch. You might wonder why there are no patches over here, because I've already deployed all the critical vulnerability patches in my environment. So that's the reason there are no critical patches available. But whenever a critical patch is released, you can find those information here, just choose it, and you can deploy it to the production environment, the same way how you do the manual deployment. And when it comes to the success rate, so a lot of customers might experience an issue. Like most of the time, whenever I do a deployment, the success rate was not great. Sometimes I'm experiencing issues. So why it is happening? If you really ask me, when you test the patches in your test environment and then push the patches to the production environment, I've seen in my experience that this issue will not happen. because whenever you test the patches in your filed environment, you'll get to know what is the exact issue. You can fix it up over there, and then you can push it to the production environment where you can achieve more success rate than the regular deployment task, how you manage. So moving up with the reports part. So when it comes to patch reports, we have made the process more simpler. We have predefined reports. So you can just go to the patches over here. If you want to know the missing patches reports, just click here. You can choose a format and you can export the report. If you need more columns, if you need to know the reports or the patches released for last month, you can very well go ahead and create a filter. You can save it and it can be managed. Or if you need a predefined report, just come to the reports part and find a predefined report with graph. So you can just go ahead and click on vulnerable system. Here it tells you how many machines are highly vulnerable. You might wonder why these machines are not up and running. So those machines are not reaching the server. Maybe they are out of network. There might be some other issues why they are not reaching server. And you can see a lot of missing patches for these machines as they are not reaching up the server, and they are all critical patches. So that's the reason the machines are not healthy. So you can fetch the report from here. Just you can click on this, you can export the report, and you can share it with your subordinates. So this is like an easy way to fetch the reports. But if you need reports to be scheduled on a daily basis and to be sent to you, it can also be done using the scheduled report option. You can customize your own report here. For example, if you need to know the patches which are installed by last month. So you can go with the detailed install patch summary. You can choose the updates you need. You can create a lot of filters. You can put up an option like, I want to know the patches deployed for a specific group or specific remote office. You can very well go ahead and choose it. And based on that, a report will be generated. And then you can very well go ahead and choose this option, like the format you need here. You can put up an option over here, which format you need the report to be sent. You can add multiple email addresses. You can put up a schedule configuration, like when you want the report to be sent, and that can also be marked here, and it can be sent to your email address. And once this part is done on a daily or a weekly basis, the reports will be shared to multiple email addresses if you want, and it can be managed in an easy way. So any questions till now, please use the chat option and get it clarified. So let's move on to the next important process, which is like managing the machines during non-office hours. For that, I'm going to take you back to the presentation. So here we're going to see how to manage the machines during non-office hours. Most of the time, customers wish to deploy patches during non-office hours. Any specific time, like early morning or midnight, they wish to deploy the patches. So in Desktop Central, we do have a customized way to manage this. So where you can go ahead and deploy the patches only during the non-office hours using up this option. So I'm going to take you back to the console to explain more about the deployment policy. So here comes the deployment policy where you can create n number of deployment policies based on your requirement. So for each and every remote site, you need a separate deployment policy. You can very well go ahead and create it. So here you can choose when the patches should get deployed, any specific time frame you need, for first week or second week or third week, or which day you wish to deploy the patches. You can very well go ahead and choose those days over here. And you can put up a non-office hours, like you want to deploy patches only during the non-office hours. You can very well go ahead and put up the time over here. So from 6 o'clock till 12 o'clock, the patches will get deployed to the environment. And you can choose when the deployment should happen, during the system startup or during the refresh cycle. So why we have provided this option? Sometimes while deploying a Microsoft Office update or a Google Chrome update, it will not, or the deployment will fail when the application is actually running. So in this case, you can very well use up this option to deploy either of these whenever or whichever happens earlier. So during the system startup, if you deploy these patches, it will be 100% successful. So moving on to the next part, which is pre-deployment setting. One of the important things to turn on the machines during non-office hours. Users might turn off the machine during the non-office hours or during non-production time. So using a Wake On Man feature, you can turn on the machines and you can deploy the patches to the production environment. And you also find another option to deploy or download patches during subsequent refresh cycle. What is this and how it exactly works? So every time the patches will be downloaded to the server, and you have a very short deployment time, just 3 hours of time. And if you feel that the deployment should start immediately once you put up a deployment window, the patches should not be moved from the server to client by the time. You don't want that to happen. Whenever a deployment task is initiated, you just want to start the deployment immediately on the client machine. You can very well use this option. So what will happen is, once the patches are downloaded to the main desktop central server, by the next 90 minutes, the client machines will reach the server and it will download the patches to it. So during the deployment window, once the deployment window is started, immediately those machines will go ahead and deploy those patches to the client machine. So this feature can be utilized when you have a very limited time frame in your deployment window. And user notification, one of the important things, if you wish to notify the users about deployment, if you want to show a pop-up on the screen, you can very well use up this option, and those information will be updated over there. And you'll also find another important thing, which is allow users to skip the deployment. If you feel the user is busy with some work and you don't want to disturb them, you can very well use up this option and you can skip the deployment. And you can also do a forced deployment later on based on your requirement. As you can see, you can do a forced deployment after 2 or 3 days. And you'll also find the reboot policy. So the reboot policy is one of the important things. As in the reboot policy, you'll find an option in the sense, most of the patches requires a reboot after installation. If the reboot is not done, those patches will not be shown as installed. So it's always recommended to reboot the machine once the deployment is done. If it's going to be a server machine, it can very well do a reboot during non-office hours. So you can put up an option over here where you can choose the options where you can, if the machine does not require a reboot, or if you can exclude the servers from reboot, or if you want to provide access to users to postpone the reboot and do a forced reboot after so many days, you can very well do that too. And I'm glad to let you know that we are working on the reboot policy. We are planning to bring up another option, which is like scheduling a time for the reboot. So where in the deployment policy itself, you can choose when the machine should get rebooted. So you can schedule a window in this, which will help you to reboot the machines on a convenient time. So here comes the deployment policy end. And I'll also like to show you how the notification looks when it comes to the deployment policy. Let me take you back to the presentation. So whenever a user is going to skip a reboot, this is how the notification is going to look like, where they can very well go ahead and choose the hours here, and they can just ignore it. And by next time, automatically it will come up with the same pop-up, where if they want to reboot the machine, they can do it, or they can just postpone it again. So forced reboot after 3 days of postponing, or 2 days based on the days you've mentioned, the machines will get rebooted. So there will be just a notification based on your selection, and they can just go ahead and restart now, or after 5 minutes, the machine will get rebooted. So we are done with the module part. So let's step into the scenarios and solutions. I completely rely on Desktop Central for patch management of both operating system and third-party applications. Is there a way to disable automatic updates of third-party application like Java, Adobe, etc.? Yes. When it comes to Desktop Central, it is possible. So under Patch Management, we do have an option over here called as Disable Automatic Updates. So using this option, you can very well go ahead and disable the Windows 10 updates, or the remaining Windows updates, or Adobe updates, Java updates. Those updates can be just disabled using up this option. You can very well create a configuration, and you can execute it to the target machines which are available, which will make a minor change in the registry, and it will stop the automatic deployment, or the automatic deployment from the vendor end. I have some legacy applications for a business that only run on older Java versions. How can I disable Java updates? So there are two options, or two ways this can be executed. One is a selective exclusion and permanent exclusion. So you all know about the selective exclusion. A simple part, you can just go to the patch management. While creating a task, you can very well choose which application should get deployed. So you can very well go ahead and choose these updates, and you can go ahead, accept, and you can choose the application which you don't wish to deploy the patches. So this is the selective exclusion. And the permanent exclusion is nothing but the decline patches. So you can just come up here, you'll find an option called decline patch. Just choose it. You can choose the target machines. You can choose a specific group of machines here. And you can very well go ahead and choose how you wish to identify those patches. You just want to decline a specific patch or a bulletin ID or an entire family. How you wish to decline, you can very well use this option, and you can decline the patches permanently. Our business applications misbehave occasionally, and I suspect that recent patch deployment could be the cause. What should I do? One of the important scenarios where most of the customers experience the same issue. So if you test the patches before deploying to the production environment, you will not experience this problem. So if you have not done that, if you still want to uninstall those patches, we do provide an option to uninstall patches using Desktop Central. So you can just go to the patch management, patches view, install patches view. You can choose the patches, and you can click on uninstall, which will uninstall the patches from the client environment. I want to push antivirus definition updates to computers. Can this be done? Yes. As I've explained to you, in the automate patch deployment task, you do find an option for the antivirus definition updates. So where I've also told you that we're going to support Windows Defender updates by this month end. So here you can go ahead and choose the updates. I do not want to deploy the new patches immediately to the entire network. I would like to automate the deployment in stages based on departments. So this is possible over here under deployment. So you find an option here. So first, you wish to deploy patches to your test environment, which you have already created a task. And after the test deployment, you want to approve those patches after 3 days. So after 3 days of approval, the patches will get deployed to the first production environment. And after 3 days of approval, you want to deploy those patches to another set of production environment. You can very well go ahead and choose it here. You can choose the target machines, and you can deploy the patches. You can stage the deployment. While deploying the patches, I came across below errors on multiple clients and how to get this fixed. A lot of customers I've seen have come up with this issue, and we have suggested, we have improvised our knowledge base to help the customers, and you can just work on your own to fix this issue. So it's a very simple process. So Office update error, whenever an Office or Microsoft Office is being corrupted, or if the previous uninstallation or the installation was not properly done, you might experience this issue. So whenever you experience these type of unknown error code or Office update error, please go through the knowledge base which being mentioned there next to the error message. If those steps are not helping you to resolve the problem, please do reach support over the agent logs as well as the screenshot of the error message to help you better. We have a lot of business critical servers running Linux and many users running Mac. How to ensure that these computers, servers are patched up to date? A very simple process. You can just go to the admin, you'll find agent settings here, and you'll find Mac agent settings and Linux agent settings. So you can choose the credentials. So you can choose the Mac OS group here. So once this part is done, agent will be visible under scope of management. Or if those machines are available under a domain, you can very well go ahead and use up the scope of management. You can choose the machine and you can deploy the agent. And once the agents are installed, it's the same way how you manage the Microsoft patches. You're going to use automated deployment or manual deployment to deploy the patches to those environments. As you all know, we're also providing support for Red Hat and CentOS. Here comes the question part. What is the average turnaround for patches to be updated by Desktop Central? So when a security update is released, we'll start supporting it from 4 hours of release time, where a non-security update will be available within 48 hours of time. And this is the maximum time, but we'll be releasing the patches as soon as possible to the customer's environment. How much disk space does a distribution server need to have to catch patches? A bit tricky question. So it really asked me, like, I'll tell you, for an example, in a distribution environment, you might have like 100 machines. If all 100 machines are going to be under the same operating system, like Windows 10, then the space required in a distribution server is really less because it's going to download only one patch for all the environment. Whereas if you have like multiple flavors of operating system in that specific environment, like Windows 8, 10, 7, Windows XP, or like all other server operating systems, then definitely the download is going to be high. But we do have a solution for this as a cleanup settings. So what you can do is you can very well go ahead and put up an option here. So patches, whenever it's getting superseded, you'll be notified, and those patches will be deleted using up this option. And whenever a patch is like older than 3 months, you can also delete those patches. And whenever it reaches the specified GB over here, like 30 GB or 40 GB, you'll also get a notification so where you can clean up the space. How can it receive patch updates based on the OS? For example, Windows 7 should get only patches applicable to Windows 7, and Windows 10 should receive only Windows 10 patches. When it comes to Desktop Central, this product has an intelligence to manage patches required only for that operating system. If Windows 7 patch machine requires Windows 7 patches, only those patches will be deployed, not the other operating system patches will be deployed. I have configured patch cleanup policy to remove old patches. What will happen when a machine needs an older patch, and how does it work? So if a machine requires a patch which is missing or which has been deleted, definitely the server will go ahead and download those patches again, and it will be deployed. I could see the difference in patches discovered by DC against WSUS and Windows updates. Why? A very frequently asked question. So in this situation, I would like to let you know there are like multiple factors involved when it comes to this mismatch. When it comes to Desktop Central, we do not show the supersede patch details. The reason why we don't show the supersede patch information is, one is for space, and the second one is a supersede patch is actually not required for that environment because the vendor have released a new update, whereas the previous update has an issue where the fix has been released in that new update. So that's the reason we override the old one and we update the new superseded patch. But when it comes to Microsoft or WSUS, they still show the superseded updates. And when it comes to the driver updates, Windows will show the driver updates where Desktop Central will not. I would also like to let you know that driver update is in our roadmap and it should be released within this year end. So like multiple other factors involved when it comes to the mismatch. If you find a lot of mismatch issues between Desktop Central and WSUS, please do share the screenshot. We'll analyze and we'll let you know what is the exact issue. Can I skip the reboot if I patch installed in a machine does not require a reboot? Yes, it is possible. You can very well go ahead to the patch management, and under the deployment policy, you'll find an option. Just go ahead and exclude a machine if it does not require a reboot. As you can see, if a machine does not require a reboot, just skip it. Yes, this is possible and it can be done using up this option. And the next question is going to be how to force reboot shutdown after 2 days from the day of deployment option to work. So whenever a reboot option is being scheduled, if you're going to choose a force reboot option, so what will exactly happen in this situation is, it is going to manage it in a more systematic way. So based on the user who's going to skip the reboot, it will wait for the next 2 days, and then it will do a force reboot in the production environment with a notification. So here comes the end of the webinar, and I'm extremely sorry for the audio issue which I've experienced during the webinar. You can also rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. You can also share your feedback about the webinar in Twitter or Facebook, even in LinkedIn. You can also let us know the places or the parts where we need to improve when it comes to the webinar. If you want us to add like multiple other features or options, you can very well let us know. The next training is going to be the software deployment, which is going to happen on 24th of this month, which is by next week. And if you need a personalized demo, a demo for Desktop Central, or if you wish to know more information about patch management in Desktop Central, please do inform us in the chat so where we can create a personalized demo for you. And if you have any queries related to the product, please reach our support where we'll be available 24/5. And we also provide support on 3 means like call, chat, and email. So you can very well reach us and we'll definitely help you to fix the problem at earliest. And thank you so much for joining the webinar in your busy schedule. You guys have a great day.